For Valentine's Day, Raid is going literary, or maybe they're just going Disney. We've got a brand new duo in the game, and in today's video, I am going to preview both of these champions, one of whom is the Valentine's Day Fusion, and the other is her duo. I am Colred, this is Colred Plays Raid Shadow Legends. Let's get started. Just a quick reminder to smash that like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and consider joining our Discord community. Also, don't miss my next Takeover Tuesday live stream. I go live at 2 p.m. Eastern on Tuesday, February 11th. I hope to see you there. We have a Hunchback of Notre Dame themed duo for this year's Valentine's Day. This is Modo of the Peal, based on Quasimodo, the eponymous Hunchback of Notre Dame from the novel. Now, as you can see, he has his hammer ready to ring the bell. He's also got some bells around his chest and on his back. And even his name, of the Peal, that's not P-E-E-L like orange peel. It's P-E-A-L, which means the sound you get when you ring a bell. Yep, that's what that word means if you didn't know. And yes, I'm a nerd. Okay, let's look at his duo, who is the Fusion Champion for February. This is Esme the Dancer, who is based on Esmeralda, the love interest for Quasimodo in the Hunchback of Notre Dame. So these two have been romantically linked for almost 150 years in literature. They've also been romantically linked in animated classics for the last 30 years or so, if you enjoy those Disney films. Let's start with Modo of the Peal here. I fully expect there to be some increased chance to receive Modo of the Peal over the course of the fusion for Esme. So how will that play out? I don't know. It could be a ×10 shard pull event. It could be a guaranteed champion event. It could be a tournament like a champion chase or champion training tournament where the winner gets Modo. But they often do something like that during a duo release. So look for that opportunity if you are interested in pairing these two champions together. Now, taking a look at his kit, his first ability, his A1, is Skull Clapper. Attacks one enemy 2 times. Has a 70% chance when booked of placing the large decreased defense debuff for 2 turns. This is really nice. It's not a 100% chance, which I would have liked to see, but it is a 2-turn duration, which is very solid. So I would say this is maybe a slightly above average legendary A1, or like an extremely good epic A1. Somewhere in that range. It's not game breaking by any means, but it's certainly going to provide additional utility. Now, his A2 books down to a 3-turn cooldown. This is Ear Splitter, which is an AoE that has a 100% chance of placing a stun debuff for 1 turn, places an extra hit on enemies under the stun debuffs, and then if Esme the Dancer is on the same team, always places that extra hit, so it doesn't matter if the stun is there or not, plus it ignores 20% of each enemy's defense. Now, he is an attack-based champion, so I expect this ability to hit pretty hard, and that means that extra hit is going to be really important to maximize his damage. So either you're going to want to make sure you build him with enough accuracy to land that stun, or you're going to want to have Esme on the same team, especially with that ignore 20% of each enemy's defense. That's a really nice bonus. So this feels like it's going to be a stronger skill with the duo together, but it's not bad even if he's by himself. Just remember that he is Force Affinity, so he will weak hit into Spirit Affinity targets from time to time. Now, his A3 is Peal of the Breaking, which looks like it books down to a 4-turn cooldown. This is another AoE, which will ignore shield buffs. The damage increases by 75% while attacking enemies under stone skin buffs. So that we've seen this once or twice before, where you have an increased ability to remove stone skin buffs through damage. I don't think this kind of thing plays for players in the mid game, really. I think it's more of an end game kind of arena thing. Clearly, stone skin is an arena thing. If this attack removes 1 or more stone skin buffs, grants this champion an extra turn. So I think this guy could be very valuable potentially in arena or live arena, especially, again, if you have Esme as the duo. We'll take a look at her kit in just a moment. Finally, he has the passive Beloved Companion. Whenever this champion kills an enemy, places a stun debuff on the enemy with the highest turn meter for 2 turns, occurs once per skill. So if he kills anybody with any of his skills, he places a stun debuff on the enemy champion who's about to go next. That's a pretty cool passive. I do think that's again a PvP passive. If Esme the Dancer is on the same team, this champion's skills will ignore 50% of each enemy's resistance. So then you don't have to build him with so much accuracy, for instance, for that A2. Also, if Esme the Dancer is on the same team, places an intercept stack on this champion at the start of their turn. Now that's really cool. He can get an intercept stack, and potentially you can still build him in, say, feral gear and get the block debuffs as well. That's awesome. He's got like a built-in pinpoint bonus, right? All right, nice. I wonder if that will stack with pinpoint, if it would give him an extra stack of intercept. I expect that would be the case. Finally, he increases ally attack in all battles by 30%, which means you can have him as your aura lead if you need him. But, you know, we usually run with different auras. So overall, I think this is a pretty good champion. I like that he's Force Affinity. That can be really valuable, especially with that stun. For instance, I have Ragash, who is my AoE stun champion, and he's Spirit Affinity, and he has trouble in certain locations because of his affinity. But we know how many Magic Affinity champions end up in Arena, and I think this Force Affinity from Modo of the Peal will be to his benefit. So we'll have to see how hard he hits. If he hits extremely hard, he could be really valuable. But again, I'm seeing him as a wave content champion. That decreased defense is usable against bosses, so he's not going to be awful for bosses, but he's going to be very good in dungeons, helping you clear waves or control waves. Think Doom Tower, think Centranos, think PvP. I don't think he's a Hydra champion. None of his abilities are really focused on Hydra, so you're probably not going to use him in that wave-based content. But everywhere else, I think he's going to have value. Now let's take a look at Esme the Dancer. She is also Force Affinity. So you're going to bring, if you're bringing the duo, you're bringing 2 Force Affinity champions, which again could be potentially valuable in PvP if she has a good PvP kit. Let's take a look at her A1. So this places an increased attack buff on all allies for 1 turn. This is a unique skill as far as I can recall. I don't think we have anybody else who places a large version of increased attack on all allies on the A1. Based on the way it reads, this may be after her attack, but if she's part of an ally attack or if she's counterattacking, she could potentially place that increased attack buff on all of her allies before they go, which is kind of cool. I like that A1. Her A2 is attacks all enemies, books down to a 3-turn cooldown. This is Earth Dancer. Has a 100% chance of placing a weaken debuff and a block debuffs buff for 2 turns. Again, on that 3-turn cooldown, that's pretty solid. Also decreases the turn meter of all enemies by 20%. If Moto of the Peal is on the same team, steals 20% of each enemy's turn meter instead. That's a nice little bump for the duo, but I don't think it's as powerful as the bump that Moto gets on his ability. Right, that ignore defense is maybe a little bit stronger than the increase of turn meter, especially because the increase of turn meter here won't work against bosses, whereas the decreased defense will work against bosses, right? Well, I guess some bosses you can still turn meter from, but I'm thinking like, you know, Hydra, clan boss. There's certainly like hard mode dungeon bosses you can't reduce their turn meter. So maybe better in like lower levels of dungeons, but not as good once you get to the hard mode dungeons. Blessing of the Sands books down to 4 turns. This places a 50% increased accuracy and increased speed buff on all allies. Has a 100% chance of removing all buffs from the enemy. And then if Moto is on the team, has a 100% chance of stealing the buffs instead. Again, I think that's a decent little bump, but it may be not as strong as Moto's bump from the duo. But still, it's an increased accuracy, which is really nice for a lot of locations where, especially we were talking about Centranos and wave content. The accuracy requirements there can get really high in hard mode Centranos. And then increased speed is always good. I love that ability. And a buff strip. So we have a buff strip and a block buffs, but they are on 2 different abilities. And then we have the passive beguiling moves, which does have a 1-turn cooldown for the active effect. But the passive effect is when hit, has a 15% chance of randomly changing the attacker's critical hits to weak, normal, or strong hits. If Moto of the Peal is on the team, the chance increases to 30%. I wonder if on an AoE, this would change the damage on your allies as well, or if it's just on Esme. If it's just on Esme, I kind of hate this. I kind of hate this. I think, first of all, it's a really low chance. Even with Moto, it's only a 30% chance. And then second of all, there are going to be times where you're attacking Esme. It's just going to be super frustrating. We've gotten champions recently who are just harder to kill because of passives like this. Think Loki, right? Like, but it's so random. I don't like this design. I wish they did something else. Like, had a 100% chance of changing the attacker's first critical hit to a weak hit or something. That would have been so much better. You could plan around that both on offense and defense. It would still have good value, and it would reduce the RNG. But this is what we get. Now, the active effect, which does have the 1-turn cooldown, is whenever this champion is hit, increases the turn meter of the ally with the highest attack by 50%. Now, if you're running the duo, that may very well be Modo. So you're getting him additional turn meter every time this champion is hit. Not a critical hit, just hit. This is what I like. This is not RNG. So you can clearly determine which champion on your team composition will be getting this additional turn meter fill. And maybe that means you can build Moto slower in some theory crafting, situations. But in general, I like extra turn meters. So I think this active effect is much better than the passive effect. I also think it's good it's on a 1-turn cooldown, because if you could do this multiple times, you're basically giving an instant turn to an ally. And then finally, we have the speed aura of increases ally speed in all battles by 19%. That is a kind of universally useful aura that we see frequently, both from epics and from legendaries. So that's solid. Now, this will be the first Fusion champion available to players who are participating in the 2025 Hell Hades free-to-play challenge. So I'm probably going to have another video in the next 24 hours or so outlining, first of all, how you would approach getting her if you want to pursue her. And then second of all, maybe talking about whether I will pursue her on my challenge account or not. So if you're interested in that video, make sure you're subscribed so you get notifications when it pops, probably in the next 24 to 48 hours. Okay, that is it for me today. Let me know in the comments below what you think about this duo. Are they as strong as other duos that we have in the game? Do you feel they're maybe a little bit on the weaker side? And are you interested in pursuing Esme the Dancer for this month's Fusion? That is it for me today. Thanks so much for hanging out. I have been Cole Red. I will see you in another video soon.